We start in the world's ugliest CGI ocean, where a giant storm sucks up a bunch of innocent sharks just minding their own business, before the word Syfy Presents appears on screen. And before you can say, this'll go well, we cut to two surfer fellas, Oakless and Chicks, on the beach, as best friends Finn and Baz head on out to sea. Elsewhere, a news report is warning about a giant fuck-off hurricane approaching the Cali coast, and a hot totty barmaid called Nova totally worries about her boss being out there in the sea, before a pervy patron totally pulls a Weinstein and tries to grab her ass. Cause this was pre-#MeToo, and I guess you used to be able to get away with molesting barmaids back in the good old days. Anyway, turns out his name is George, and he asks her about her ugly ass scar on her leg. But she seems rather embarrassed and just says, I cut myself shaving. Now shut up about it already. Meanwhile, back out at sea, a bunch of sharks start munching people up. So naturally, everyone just stands around looking totally gormless, until it starts to dawn on them that seawater shouldn't really be red and gooey. I mean, maybe brown or a little greeny if you're near a wastewater pipe or have just gone swimming with my mate Dirty Dave. But certainly not bloody and lumpy. Whilst elsewhere, Finn saves a wounded Baz and treats his leg, before we later cut to Finn's bar, where said Baz fella is now totally patched up and A-OK. Anyway, they reckon it's just a little storm that's pushed the blubbery fellas so far inland, and it'll totally be fine to go back surfing in a day or so. And after rejecting Nova's constant advances, a giant hurricane approaches, so Finn calls up his ex-floozy to warn her about the impending storm, and also to complain about her no longer using her old name, but she just says they're not together no more, so she's gone back to going by her maiden name of Tara Reid. So shut up about it already. But suddenly, a giant shark is blown into the bar, and like most blurry-eyed bar crashers, the randy fucker goes straight for the big-titted blonde, who's also lost her shirt because reasons. So they poke it in the brain and get the heck out of Dodge, as the storm throws up more sharky treats onto the harbour and then sends a giant fuck-off Ferris wheel after them. Anyway, after it all blows over, he channels the feelings of Portland residents during the 2020 BLM riots and just stares in heartbreak at the ruined rubble of his livelihood. Bruh. Before the group proceed to try to get out of the city, which is now completely flooded and totally infested with them naughty fishies. Now cut off and stuck on the waterlogged freeway, Finn helps some more gormless citizens get to safety, whilst Gropey George rescues a dog and thereby totally redeems himself for molesting that maid earlier, before then getting crushed by a tidal wave. LOL! Hilariously, they all just shrug and move on, and after using his super tuned surfing skills to time the waves so he can somehow drive through them with no problem, Finn heads on over to Tara Reid's gaff, where he just wants to take his daughter to safety. But his ex-wife's current squeeze says he's just been a drama queen about a little bit of rain, before getting drenched by a deluge and then munched up by a shark. Huh, and you thought you were having a bad day. And after Nova pops a whole clip into the poor fucker, they escape just in the nick of time, as gallons of water burst out of every orifice. Which is just like me after 5 minutes at Taco Bell, son. So they then try to come up with a plan to find their son Matt, but soon come across a stranded school bus full of kiddies and shit. But unfortunately, the water is totally rising, so naturally, he goes up to the bridge and rappels down. And before you can say, how does he know how to rappel when he's just a simple surfer who owns a bar and also where the heck did he get the gear from? He saves every last single one of them, and even including the fat ass incel driver fella, before a sudden resurgence of wind blows all sorts of alphabetical debris their way. And the poor Virginial driver finally gets laid flat for the first time in his life, but not in the good way. And before you can say, well, he ain't the first one to get fucked by Hollywood, they just drive off now the storm has died down again, before fending off yet another sharky intruder who's rudely trying to carpool with them without chipping in for gas. Liberties! Later, Finn's daughter bonds with Nova in a shop, but also warns her to forget about trying to seduce her dad, because all he does is break women's hearts and save innocent people from shark attacks and shit, so he's totally not worth it, bro. Also later, they finally find their son Matt hiding out in his flight school cupboard like a wry pussy old cuck, whilst outside, a giant yet terrible CGI water funnel looms over the city. Now reunited, they all get tooled up, whilst Matty has the genius idea to use one of the choppers he's recently been learning to fly to throw a bunch of homemade bombs into the tornado and blast the bitey bastards to bits. And the film then hilariously has Baz pop his head round the corner to unironically try and explain the science of such a madcap scheme, which ultimately amounts to, "Oh, trust me bro." Naturally, Tara Reid is feeling pretty anxious about letting her son go up in a chopper what he's barely qualified to fly and then drop a load of bombs into the middle of a giant shark-infested murder cloud. But her acting is so bad that they just laugh in her face and dismiss her. Matt then notices Nova totally hiding that ugly ass leg scar again, so naturally, he lifts up his shirt and shows her his own gross ass scar, what he got when he fell off a slide when he was young, which then makes her comfortable enough to reveal her tragic backstory, about how she once got bit by a shark when on a fishing trip with her granddad. So now she has a massive grudge against them blubber buggers, and she totally hated them before it was cool. Later, Finn tries to talk Baz out of planning for a plan B, which is to totally nut up and do one of them self-sacrifice things, by throwing a bigger bomb that he's made into the storm and doing a badass kamikaze run. Or some shit. Anyway, Matt takes Nova up the funnel. Steady? As Finn hilariously provides cover by shooting some sharks out of the sky with a little pistol from 200 feet below. Nova then lobs a bomb into the first Nado and promptly blows the sharks to Kingdom Come, which also somehow equalises the internal pressure of said funnel and thereby making it dissipate. Because science, bro. Meanwhile, down on the ground, Finn pops some more flying fishes out of the sky, but not before one lands right on Baz's leg. And it looks like it's curtains for the Tasmanian surfer bro what's now suffered 2 shark bites in one day. Lol, what are the chances? Anyway, the poor fucker is soon sucked up into the spout, whilst Matt and Nova eventually succeed in stopping the second cyclone. But unfortunately, some of them fishy fellas totally survive being blown up real good and proper, and miraculously land slap bang in a community swimming pool. So naturally, Finn smothers the entire thing in oil and burns them alive in the middle of water, because again, science bro! Also unfortunately, our heroes totally can't stop the third storm, and after trying to stab up another uninvited passenger cheekily trying to hitch a lift without even chipping in for gas money, Nova totally falls out of the chopper and into the mouth of a passing shark. Whilst Matt fails his final flying exam by crash landing in the middle of a parking lot. And after essentially just shrugging again when informed of Nova's tragic yet farcical demise, he totally nicks that self-suicide plan B thing from the recently deaded Baz and drives toward the final superstorm with a giant bomb in the back of his truck, but totally cucks out at the last minute and jumps off, because turns out he quite likes doing that living thing, and luckily he didn't even need to die anyway, because his plan totally works regardless. But after the final storm dissipates, the city is then under siege once more by a falling swarm of piss-poorly rendered CGI sharks. And Finn also totally redeems himself for pussing out earlier by saving his teenage daughter from getting munched up, and then dives straight into the belly of a beast. But luckily, he totally had a chainsaw on him, so proceeds to carve the brute up from the inside like a common hog. And also somehow pulls out that Nova bird what had a secret crush on in the whole film, because turns out it was magically the same exact shark that just swallowed her 10 minutes ago. And before you can say, that's the biggest load of bullshit since that crank geezer fell out of a helicopter and totally got back up for a sequel. Bruh. Tara Reid snogs the shark guts off her ex-hubby, and then they all watch the sunset while surrounded by the stinking carcasses of an endangered species. And that's it. That's the movie. Though my favourite part was when Nova said, "We're going to need a bigger chopper." Whereas all I could think was what you really need is a bigger CGI budget, love. Because this could have looked great if only they hadn't wasted millions of dollars going through numerous coaches just to try and teach Tara Reid how to bloody act. But anyway, that's a plot and that's a lot. Considering that bell thing so you don't miss any future recaps. Tell me if you like this flick in the comments if you have time. And I'll see you in the next one.